All right, there we go. It's as good as it gets. All right, that's what we want to take care of right there. There we go. Perfect. Perfect, perfect, perfect. All righty. Good. We've got about 8 minutes. Let me pull up the chat here and see if we've got anybody popping in to get. Now, folks, Mitch is not going to see the chat today. So,
Um,
you
you
know,
know what?
if you wanted to bring it up as a separate window, then you can just kind of set it off to the side right over my face or your face, whichever one you don't
Right.
need to see.
Since we have 8 minutes, let me grab. I've got a backup MacBook over here. Let me see if I can pop it up and make it work real quick.
All right.
Only take
All right.
30 seconds. All right, hang
Sure.
on.
No problem. No problem. All right, let's see who else has joined us. Looking over the list, Carl is here. Welcome, Carl. Glad to have you. Chris is here.
There's always a plan B in life, Tom. I remember giving an opening statement 25 years ago when laptops were first used in the courtrooms. Everything's working, right? Everything's ready. The jury comes in. The judge says, Mr. Jackson, begin your opening statement. And of course, the projector and laptop don't work, right?
Yeah.
So I had to walk back and forth in front of the jury with my right, and it was a case where a product didn't work correctly, so it actually worked out just well. But I didn't plan it that way.
They probably pay
You
better
know,
attention. That's right.
it was a real pre-social media transparent experience. But I'll tell you what I learned from that is always have a backup plan, right?
Yes. Yes.
And until it happens to you, it's hard to ingrain that in everyone's minds. So let me
Well,
see
and
if I.
there's a certain amount of professionalism that says you got to be prepared to wing it under any circumstance and make it
Oh
look
yeah.
like, of course, I planned it this way. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, yeah, that too. Let's see. Okay, it looks like.
The URL is easternshorebroadcasting.com /
Oh,
Tom's dash chat. That's it. You're there. You're there. And folks, I would remind you, and we're going to welcome Mitch officially in just a minute. But if you're watching us on Facebook or if you're watching us on YouTube, directly on YouTube, come on over to easternshorebroadcasting.com because that's where the chat is. And the chat, if you, let's see if we can find the chat here so you can
I
get a
need to
quick
log
look.
in.
Yeah,
So I need to log in maybe using Twitter, right?
that'll work. Yeah, the chat looks like this. So this is what your chat looks like. And come on over to easternshorebroadcasting.com if you're watching us on Facebook or on YouTube directly. That way you can get in on the chat and you kind of get, it's kind of the backstory that's going on all the time. Because we won't be displaying the chat during the show, just kind of popping into it every now and then to
Mm.
show folks what it looks like. And Mitch, I'm in the process of just welcoming folks that are just joining us, and that would include Rich and Texas Mike and Charlie Luley, Bill from Texas. Bill, did I already welcome you? If I did, you get it twice, which means somebody else like John O'Malley might not get it a second time. Philip's here. George Price is here. George, we are glad you are back on your feet and running full speed. George had a series of strokes a while back and ended up having
Mm.
some stents put in one of his arteries, and that's nothing to mess around with. Mike L
No.
is here, so we're officially the whole gang is here now. Let's see. Um, who else?
So Tom, can I ask you a question?
Sure, fire away.
So I've got the chat fired up. Where do I actually type in feedback? So for example, yeah, so
Yeah, you may have to shrink the screen a little bit. I'm not sure
oh,
about
okay.
on a Mac, but on a PC, it's a control dash. And down at the bottom, there'll be a little section that says, Enter your witty observations here,
Down at the bottom. Okay.
down at the
Okay.
bottom. And
Gotcha.
that's where the guys are typing in.
Okay, so I'm going to rely upon you to share any awesome questions in the chat. It's not going to work on my MacBook, but that's okay because
Okay.
this is all about.
Okay. All right.
We're good.
Dave says it's my fault. Whatever it is, it's my fault. And Jerry, the offline flag from TalkTO is basically for the online chat. And when I'm available during the course of the day, that'll actually say off. That'll say online. If you'd like, if you have a question, click here or something like that. So yeah, that's going to kind of stay on the website.
Do you know, Tom? Do you know Mike Alton?
I do not.
You gotta connect with Mike. I've got him on my show in about an hour.
Okay.
And his blog was named one of the top 10 like tech blogs by Social Media Examiner for 2017.
Right. Cool.
Really cool dude. So yeah, check it out if you haven't connected with Mike. I'm just looking at my notes and.
All right. And Indrit is here. Is Prashana there? We've got a guy from Nepal that gets up at 2:30 in the morning to watch the show.
Wow. Awesome.
But he must have slept in today. About maybe 2/3 of the show are folks in the U.S. We've got some Canadians and a number of Europeans and some Australians, which for them it's
Very cool.
5 o'clock in the morning.
And the time zone thing with social, isn't it amazing?
Yes.
We just did a family trip to London, and I was very active on social while I was over there. Couple of takeaways. Number one, it gives you a chance to build a whole new audience with a whole new time zone. Number two, it blew me away when we were going live on Periscope at, in the middle of the morning, over in London, which was 2 or 3 or 4 in the morning here in California, and people were up in California engaging. That blew me away. I'm like, what are you guys doing? Get some sleep.
Yep. Well, and that's probably just their normal routine.
Wow. Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, it is. I do business with folks in Australia, and so coming up with a time when we can chat eyeball to eyeball is always a little bit of a challenge. Ends up being after supper for me, which would be the middle of the morning for them, just about. Jim Jacobs is here. Well, Jim, if you can't be here on time, just get here whenever you can. Let's see who else might have popped in. Guest 422, that's Martin. Martin's joining us from England.
Very cool.
And all right. If I've missed you, my apologies. Tish, I see you right up there at the top. Very good. I also noticed we've got a number of folks that are watching us on Facebook and watching us on YouTube that you can't take advantage of the chat. This is what the chat looks like right here. Right there is the chat. So if you'd like to join in the chat or read the chat, because sometimes the chat's more interesting than the show. Not today, of course, but on other days. But
well,
if
we'll
you'd
see.
like,
Only time will tell.
That's right. But if you'd like to get in on the chat, come on over to easternshorebroadcasting.com, click the Watch Live button at the top, and that'll take you to a page where you'll see this. You'll see a YouTube embed, and then right below this will be the chat. You can pop out the chat and put it over my face. That way you can just see Mitch, whatever suits you. I think we're just about ready to start here, Mitch. Let's make sure we haven't missed anything. Yeah, Tom Willis says that we can start. Martin S. is here. Martin S. is from England, and Martin's thing is he likes to live stream from off the grid. So he will go out in the boonies with all sorts of wireless contraptions and batteries, and he'll remote in to a show that's on Monday evenings, at least Monday evenings over there, and talk about live streaming from off the grid. It's really cool. Martin Sheen, good guy. All right, so we've got a few folks that still haven't joined us in chat, but we are going to get the show on the road here. Let me test one thing before we get started.
While you're testing, Martin, connect with me on Twitter because I like to live stream off the grid also when I'm flying the drone. I'll be in the middle of nowhere and I'll use my Wi-Fi hotspot and share live on Periscope. So it's kind of fun. It's a challenge. It makes live streaming fun.
It's adventurous. That's right.
Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't.
Merle is very sharp. Merle, notice that we've got different frames today. Merle, these are the work of Byron Lindsay, and we'll talk more about them, not today, but next week when we talk more about studio things. But thank you for noticing. It's really pretty cool. We've got to tweak them just a little bit, but it's going to be fun. All right, let's see. The setup that I've got here today, let me flip over to this one, Mitch, so you can just see, is I've got a laptop set up here that's on my network, and then I've got my production PC. Actually, it's in a closet off to the side, but in front of me, and you can see kind of a green screen set up behind where I've draped my desk in a green screen, and then I have a green screen behind me and all sorts of lights here. But the laptop serves as the recording and the streaming part of this process, and the image that is the main production goes over the Ethernet, a gigabit Ethernet here, to this baby through a process called NDI that was developed by Newtek. And so it allows me basically to break my production up into different PCs based on the strengths of the various PCs. And sometimes,
cool.
not today, but sometimes I'll bring in remote guests on a couple of extra PCs in the closet, and those will come in via NDI, which will carry the video and the audio. And it's amazing. It's revolutionizing the video business, where they pass audio and video back and forth.
It's impressive,
really cool.
Tom. That's why I became a lawyer, not a tech guy. That was way over my head.
Well, and the fun thing about it is it's really easy to do. So if you're interested in it, by all means, holler to me. We'll help you get set up. All right. Looks like, is the wife here? Oh, the wife is here. Very good. And she says that I'm complaining about the time difference to Australia, and there they are. They sit every week at 9 p.m. See, at 9 p.m., what else would you do but watch a cool show like this? Okay.
Right.
All right. Mitch, I'm going to drop your mic for just a second, and we're going to get the show going. I'll have a little brief introduction. I'm going to welcome some of the folks that have joined our Streaming Idiots group and our YouTube subscriptions. And then I'll introduce you, and we'll go at it. Okay?
Sounds good.
All right. So we're going to make Mitch disappear audially for just a second. And let's get back on our show tab. Let's put that one up for just a second. And in the chat room, if I forget to turn Mitch's mic back on, y'all yell at me, because sometimes I forget to do that. All right. Okay, so here we go. We're going to fade to black and get on with the show. Hello and welcome. I'm Tom Sinclair, and you have gotten to Streaming Idiots. You're probably here by accident, so you're free to just change the channel to somewhere else. But if you like streaming, and if you feel like you're not completely competent at doing it, then you are in the right place. We are going to talk about streaming and all things streaming. Today we have a very special guest. We've got Mitch Jackson, an attorney out of California, who's going to talk to us about copyrights. And so we'll bring Mitch on in just a second. And if you haven't already, you'll want to get a notebook and a pencil so that you can make some notes on this show. Well, the show's going to be rebroadcast. I mean, it's available on YouTube at easternshorebroadcasting.com. Anytime you want to, you can go there and see a rerun of this, so you can pull the notes out at your leisure. And you won't want to do this for Mitch, but you probably will want to do it for me. On YouTube, when you're watching something that's been previously recorded, you can change the play speed, so you can speed it up and you can hear me at twice the normal speed. Imagine what that would be. You can also cut it in half and make it go slow if you want to. You probably don't want to. A lot of stuff going on in the streaming world. They just introduced a 4K webcam this week. Blackmagic had a lot of cool stuff that they've introduced. If you haven't already, you probably, let's see, let's put this up for just a second. You'll want to join our Facebook group, because that's where you can stay up with a lot of this stuff. It's facebook.com/group/streaming idiots, and you can be a part of the group at that point. And I also want to welcome those folks that have joined the group since last week. I mean, we've just been overwhelmed with folks that are joining, and we're delighted that you're here. Luke Austin, Martin Hofling, Rick Armentrout, Andreas Lindermark, Tony Kassar, Larry Megan, Trevor Albert, Rafael Oramas, Shiri Kanta Sahu, sorry I butchered that one, I'm sure, Kyle Hillman, Stephanie Fleischer, Adam Drainsfield, Demago Crepin, Hayden Lombarth, John O'Malley, Scott Bone, Tillen Kegel, Timothy Moon, Maurice Harmon, Steve Topic, Greg Kuliga, James Miller, Frank Chitz, Daniel Tremblay, Reginald Mahomey, Garrett Burge, Dusty Austin, Braxton Nutt, Richard Felix, Cinco Van Koolen, Paulo Madeira, Pontus Maltborg, James Lowry, Kevin Plant, and James Goldie. Welcome to the Facebook Live Streaming Idiots group. We hope it's going to be a real benefit to you. I notice some of you guys have already posted on there. And for folks that have just joined our YouTube subscribers, Cinco Van Koolen again, William Golden Jr., Ahmed Handy, Washington Ignacio, there we go, Cedric Pollard, Ngozi at Night, Gavin Davis, Dreg 14, Democracy Live Scott, Maurice Harden, Cleveland Albuquerque, Charles Norby, Keetwan Brooks, Ulysses Modriquez, Check One Media, Raina Luthi, and Complete Jewish Bible. Thank you for subscribing. If you haven't already subscribed to us on YouTube, please do. They'll send you a notice when we're live and also when we post a new video. And if you join the Streaming Idiots group, then of course you get to hear all the cool stuff right when it happens. So I will point out that on the Streaming Idiots group today, Dan Slider with PI Engineering, those are the folks that make the X keys. He has posted a poll because he wants to get some input on how to design their next series of X keys. So go to Facebook/groups/Streaming Idiots and go ahead and check that out. And if you've got an opinion on it, go ahead and let him know, because they need to know an answer. They want to know about the color of a button, as to what color is going to be the best for end users. Kind of nice to have a manufacturer ask those kind of questions, don't you think? All right, let's see. Let's bring Mitch in. Mitch is I would say he's a unique attorney. Number one, he seems pretty nice, which is pretty unique, at least in my experience. He combines law and technology and social media, and he's a disruptor, is what he is. And he is trying to help people in his field improve not only their legal technique, but their business technique, their methods, their systems. He's spoken about the law and technology and social media all over the place. He's been a trial lawyer for 30 years. In 2013, he was a California Litigation Lawyer of the Year. In 2009, he was Orange County Trial Lawyer of the Year. I mean, this guy, we don't want to mess with him. That's for sure. We want to have him. We want to have him as one of our friends. So let me bring his mic up, and let's bring him on. Mitch, welcome to the show. Glad to have you.
Tom, it's good to be here. It's my pleasure. And by the way, absolutely love the title of your show, Streaming Idiots. I can't speak for you, but it's perfect to have me on this show, okay? Best live streaming show I've been on.
Thank you. The concept behind it, Mitch, is, to some degree, this is new technology for most everybody, and we're all going to make a ton of mistakes, and, what the heck? Let's go ahead and admit that up front, get it out of the way, and say, none of us is perfect, and so we're not going to be critical of each other. We're going to be helpful of each other, and that's been a good thing. That's been a good thing.
It's a good thing, and that's when I'm speaking, and thank you for the very, very kind introduction. I just love this stuff, okay? This is, besides motocross racing and technology, I also happen to practice law. That's kind of the order of things. And I've ridden and raced motocross for 38, 39 years. And I try to tell other lawyers out there, show your human side. It's okay to make mistakes, especially with technology. People relate to other human beings. None of us are perfect. We all do silly things. And when you're on live stream, it happens with the world watching. And that's okay, right? Nobody really cares.
And it's right there. Yeah, you can't cover it up. Absolutely.
Well,
Well, you are here today because, number one, several people suggested you by name. They didn't say go out and get a California attorney, somebody that knows a little bit about media and technology and something. They said get Mitch Jackson. So you're the guy. And a lot of the viewers of this show have had problems in the past. In fact, I've got an email right here that I've been asked to kind of throw out to you and get your opinion on once we get going. But the whole issue of copyrights, music, videos, live performances, recorded performances, all of that. Can you kind of give us some help there? Tell us, maybe explain for those folks that don't even know what a copyright is. Let's start there and then sort of work our way through that chain.
Sure. And it's never been more important with the rolling out of social media, digital, and now with live streaming. A picture's worth 1,000 words, right? But when it comes to a copyright lawyer, his or her favorite words are cease and desist. So it's really, really important that everybody appreciate the intellectual property issues involved with live streaming. And just to put some things into context, Tom, some of the things we'll be talking about are things that I've actually litigated about. This isn't theory. A lot of it's common sense approaches to help everybody avoid copyright, intellectual property issues. I realized this was really, really important stuff the first time I traveled back to New York and spoke at Periscope Summit. I was on a panel and we talked about these things when Periscope first rolled out. And it was a very popular panel discussion. We then rolled over to San Francisco the next year and we had a line. It looked like I was on stage looking at the Department of Motor Vehicles. There was a line there of entrepreneurs who had questions about what we're going to talk about today. So I'm all in on digital. I'm all in on live streaming. And because of that, I just enjoy sharing my thoughts on intellectual property and copyright law. And the bottom line, I think what everyone needs to understand is what applies offline in the business world when it comes to copyrights and trademarks and trade names and service marks, intellectual property. What applies offline applies online. Primarily, it's the same rules and regulations. The difference is what I'm seeing is a lot of people firing up their smartphone, right, which I love. This thing's awesome. And going live. And while they're going live, they're sharing intellectually protected photos, music, videos, and things like this. They're breaking the law, both state and federal, and they don't realize it.
Right.
Now, I'm one of those lawyers where I tell my clients, Tom, I want you to encourage other people to share your material. I want you to encourage people to share your content on your websites, okay? I'm a big believer that things are changing. And to get your voice heard out in the world, you need people sharing your content. So I tell my clients, take a deep breath, don't get all wrapped up on the intellectual property rights stuff, and encourage your visitors to share your stuff. Having said that, copyright law still applies in today's world, and people need to pay attention to it.
I had a situation about 6 months ago. I do live streaming at my church, and maybe we can talk a little bit more about that specifically in just a minute. But as we did with today's show, we kind of had a pre-show where you and I talked a little bit, and even before that, while the show was waiting to get started, I had a screen up there and had some music playing on it. Well, at the church, they had some background music playing before the service, and we broadcast the service on YouTube, and sure enough, YouTube picked up on a minute's worth of that background music and immediately flagged that video as having copyrighted content.
Sure.
Within an hour. It was amazing.
The technology is catching up with monitoring everything that we're talking about. And I'm speaking next week at Summit Live in Los Angeles. I'll be on stage with Robert Scoble, who used to be with Microsoft. Everybody knows Robert. with Al Roker, who's really big time into live streaming. And the reason I'm up there is to share what you just said and what we're going to talk about today with 1,000 creators in the audience. And eventually the technology, Tom, and I don't want to get too sidetracked, will be automatically monitoring everything we do. And it will allow creators to know ahead of time before they post or share if they're violating somebody's copyright, if they're violating somebody's trademark. And I'm really excited about these algorithms that are being developed right now that will help protect all of us from getting into trouble. But until then, I'm going to share some of the tips that I'm sharing today, because until that rolls out, we need to monitor ourselves. And let's talk a little bit about what copyrights are, because that's the first thing. What people need to understand is that when you create something, whether it's a blog post, you write a blog post, a book, you produce a movie, you create an image, whatever it might be, if you're the creator of that item, you have the copyright. You're the owner of that item. You have the exclusive rights, generally speaking, to use that item for pretty much anything that you want to use it for. That's the general rule. And I like to tell people in my audiences, if you're using somebody else's picture, video, song in the background, you're at a restaurant shooting somebody's karaoke performance, and you don't have permission from that person or from the band whose music you're listening to share that on live stream, the general rule is you probably don't have the right under intellectual property rights law to do what you're doing. So if you didn't create the content, you probably don't have the right to use it. But there are a few exceptions. And before we get into those exceptions, what I always tell people is reach out to the creator of the content and ask permission before you use it. That's the first step, right? So if I see an image that I'd like to use in a blog post or in a PowerPoint during one of my presentations, and Tom, you created it, I didn't, I need to reach out to you and try to get your permission. And whether I get your permission in an email, a text, using formal documentation, obviously the more documentation, the better, then that's the way to do it. But there are some exceptions that would allow me to use your picture or even this show if I chose to do so under the fair use exception. And we can talk a little bit more about that later on in the show. But the general rule, guys and gals, is if you didn't create the content, then please don't use it without the creator's permission.
And I think everybody probably agrees with that and sees the fact that, that's the right way to play the game. You don't steal somebody's lunch. And when people make money off their own content and you use it, then in essence, you're stealing their lunch. But a lot of what we're running into is an inadvertent or accidental situation where somebody's live streaming a parade and the band is playing a song in the parade, or somebody's live streaming a basketball game, and in the timeout, the arena plays music during the timeout. And those things are being flagged by Facebook and YouTube. Those are the two I can think of right off the top. And sometimes within just a matter of minutes, and sometimes people have had their streams taken down. Their live stream has been shut down because of that copyright violation in what was just background.
It's not an alleged violation. It is a violation under current law. And it doesn't matter that somebody, and don't get me wrong, I get it, and I've done it myself, okay? It's easy to do. But the reality is that, as you described, Tom, those are copyright violations. People need to be aware of that. Just because we have more and more live streaming users not aware of the laws doesn't mean that they're not subject to the law.
Certainly.
Okay, ignorance of the law is no excuse. And so
that's right.
What I enjoy doing is just sharing, look, guys and gals, this is what the law is. Be aware of that. Be smart about it. Now, the reality is what you just described, generally speaking, most companies, most bands aren't going to go after somebody who inadvertently, shares a halftime performance at a basketball game, in a high school basketball game. It's probably not something that's going to come back and bite you in the butt. But having said that, we have seen, had clients call us who have live streamed at big concerts, and well-known influencers who then take that live stream, and when they put it out to their Twitter feed with millions and millions of people who are following them, there are issues. And the music companies, the bands, The producers and all of their lawyers take exception to that. And so you've just got to be careful with how you go about sharing, even in an inadvertent fashion, somebody else's content. Now, there are some exceptions, Tom. And so the exceptions fall under the fair use.
Fair use. Okay, good.
Fair use. And unfortunately, it's not black and white. And I'll talk about that in a couple of minutes. Not because
What part of the law is black and white? It's
right.
all
Otherwise,
open
I'd
for
be out of
interpretation.
Yeah, so be careful with this. But here's the thing. If I take Tom's show, if I take Streaming Idiots, this show today, and I use it for a post that I do where I'm criticizing what Tom's doing, almost like a commentary. If I'm reporting
Easy
on
to
the
do.
news, no, it's not. But if I'm doing a news show about the Streaming Idiots and I show a clip from the Streaming Idiots, if I'm teaching a classroom and I'm showing Streaming Idiots up on a display screen, or I printed out copies of your show and I'm handing out color pictures of you and I right now to the class to talk about live streaming, if I'm using it for research, generally these are some areas that the courts have found it's not a copyright violation. These are exceptions under the fair use doctrine. The problem is it's usually not a black and white type of scenario. If the Evening News took a clip from this show, give you an example. I was on a show a few years ago with Katie Couric, who we all know and love as a news broadcaster. And something had happened earlier that day that regarding her that created a controversy. And later on that night, what we then found out is the episode, just like this, we were talking just like this, our episode ended up on TMZ nationally, okay? And they took the clip and they didn't get anybody's permission. They didn't get my permission. They didn't get her permission, but they ran it as a news story / commentary story, which is fine, no big deal. But they had the right to do that. There are some situations where there's a question as to whether or not it's really a news story. Is it really being used as a commentary? Is it instead actually being used to sell a product or a service, to give the impression that Katie and I are endorsing your product or service? Okay, so it's masked in a way where it's a news story, but it's fake news, right? It's really selling the product. Sure. That's where you're probably going to get a cease and desist letter. That's when you'll probably find yourself at the losing end of a lawsuit. So I don't want to see people put themselves in that situation. And the fair use doctrine is an applicable doctrine. It has force and effect. Unfortunately, oftentimes what I see with the fair use doctrine is whoever has the best lawyer wins. And it can be an expensive exercise for everybody to find themselves engaged in. So instead of going that direction, reach out to the creator, try to get his or her permission to use the content in your live streaming show, and then you're good to go.
Okay. All right. That's the scenario where there are two parties. There's the content creator and the content user. And the scenario that we're running into is where there's a third party involved. And that third party is afraid of being sued by the creator because this third party has got deep pockets. This third party is Google or Zuck. And they don't want to get sued by somebody because Tom Sinclair inadvertently live streamed, Mick Jagger, who was playing during a timeout at a basketball game. And so that person, out of fear from this person, shuts me down, just shuts me down. And I'm a little guy, and I don't have any recourse at all, For example, I've got this letter here. Let me read you some of this, because this is where we live. We are not likely going to be in a situation where we're going to take Mitch Jackson's video and reuse it in a way that is going to gain fame and fortune for us.
Tom, before you read your letter, sure. When you say we, I am part of you. I've had my content automatically taken down from Facebook or YouTube in the past.
Yeah.
So I've been there.
Yeah.
I understand what.
So what did you do? Did you fire off a nasty letter to the legal department at YouTube?
No, I realized I used somebody else's content improperly, and I shouldn't have done it.
Okay.
Not a big deal. Life's too short. There's so much. There's so much that you and I can be doing. The last thing I'm going to spend my time on is taking on Google or Facebook when I've used somebody else's content inadvertently. And it's exactly as you mentioned. It was at a Supercross event where I was live streaming the event on Periscope and sharing it on Twitter. And what I didn't even think about was the music playing in the background. The algorithm picked it up and chewed it up and spit it out, right? No big deal. No big deal. But I didn't mean to interrupt you. Please read the email.
No, that's good. That's
So
good.
I've been there and done that, you know.
I mean, the people that watch this show, you know, they're going to be streaming curling. They're going to be streaming jet ski races. They're going to be streaming basketball, football, baseball, soccer. I mean, you name a sporting event that's indoors, outdoors, that's on the planet. And our viewers are streaming it, and they are, you know, bumping their heads into this thing. They're going, hey, look, you know, we're just in the venue. Here's a slightly different case. This is from Giles, who has a TV show, internet TV show on Monday nights called This and That. And he live streamed it, and he had a backdrop, kind of like this backdrop right here, except it had some motion in it. And he downloaded it from a website that I'm not going to name, and the website said that this has a CCO public domain, free for commercial use, no attribution required. So he thought, oh, this is great. This is out in the public domain. I'll use it. Well, it turns out that the website that said it's in the public domain either didn't know or didn't tell that it wasn't really. It was just something that was uploaded and it was stolen from somebody else. And so he got flagged for it. And not only did he get flagged for it by YouTube, but they shut down his YouTube channel. And so he hasn't been able to stream on that channel. And as you know, if you do a lot of social media, when you develop a channel, even though, you know, you may not be paying for it, it has a lot of value. There's a lot of value attached to the folks that regularly watch and listen and have subscribed to it. And yeah, you know, I can go through the rest of the letter, but that's the essence of a situation where he was under the impression what he was doing met all the requirements for not fair use, but proper use.
So it's important to do your due diligence. And with respect to that particular example, what people need to understand, I'm just looking at some notes that I use when I speak, is, you know, stock photo services, Creative Commons licenses, and public domain repositories of images are not subject to the fair use exception. In other words, you're generally purchasing that item and you're downloading it. And when you're purchasing that item, you're relying upon the fact that it's a reputable company that has the right to sell or license you that image, that backdrop that you're talking about.
Right.
So if I purchase a stolen vehicle from somebody on the street corner, it's a $30,000, you know, car, and I buy it for $200 or not at all, okay? The question is, do I have the right to do whatever I want with that stolen vehicle that I just bought for $200? And the answer is no, you don't. In most states, okay? At least here in California, you don't. And by the way, everybody, I'm licensed in California, and these are not legal opinions. These are just my thoughts.
I was waiting for this disclaimer. Yes.
No, but the point is it's the end doesn't justify the means. And so what all of us need to understand as consumers, especially those of us in business using digital, is you want to do your due diligence. You want to make sure that when you're purchasing or downloading any type of item that might be subject to intellectual property rights, pictures, videos, clips, whatever it might be, deal with reputable companies, make sure that they have the ability to license you the rights to use it. And Tom, some of the issues we see here in California are expensive movie productions where an entire day's worth of shooting, hundreds of thousands of dollars of content that's being shot in a movie studio has to be scrapped because there's a BMW in the background that somebody didn't get permission to include in the shot. There's a Coca-Cola can in the background that Coca-Cola did not give the rights for that producer to use, or those rights weren't purchased, or whatever the case might be. So in the real world where there's real big dollars involved, they do their due diligence. And frankly, for those of us that are small businesses, entrepreneurs, or solopreneurs, we have to do the same due diligence also. And I do see the law slowly changing, Tom. I see the law is always about 8 to 10 years behind technology, okay? And I do see eventually the law changing and hopefully being tweaked just a little bit to help make the implications or the penalties not as severe for a innocent consumer who thought he or she was doing the right thing and then found out after the fact that you didn't do the right thing. In other words, maybe be a little bit more flexible, because it's so much more easier today to be misled online with Photoshop, with some of the audio programs that are
But
out
if it's
now.
on the internet, Mitch, it's got to be true.
I understand that, you know, you can quote me on that. And so, yeah, so the point being is we need to do our due diligence. And that not only includes intellectual property issues like we're talking about, but when you're doing business with somebody else, the majority of my phone calls, Tom, are people that have been scammed, people that have been taken advantage of by other people online who portray themselves as being legitimate business people, and they're not.
Right.
So it's just a concept of doing business that probably is more applicable today than it's ever been.
Okay, let's talk about a get out of jail free card, because everybody wants one. And there's some people that say they have them and that they will sell you one, like a BMI or a CCLI, a company that has secured the rights to lots and lots of music, for example, and will now sell you a license so that
Sure.
you don't get in jail. Explain that a little bit to us, if you will.
So I use those types of companies when I upload my drone footage over the Pacific Ocean. I like to add music to that. And I've got a couple of subscriptions where supposedly the music has, you know, I've got permission to use it. And that's great. The way it works, though, is if the content that you're downloading, whether it's music, a photo, or a movie, from a company that doesn't actually have permission to use that, you know, to sell you that content or license you that content, you can still find yourself at the wrong end of a lawsuit. But if that happens, what you can do as a consumer is, instead of just filing an answer to the lawsuit, you can cross-complain back against that third-party company. They've committed fraud, and you're the victim of their fraud. They said that they had the right to sell you something, and they didn't. They breached a contract. They were negligent. They may have committed intentional fraud or negligent fraud. So you have recourse to get reimbursed, indemnification. There are all types of things you can do. Unfortunately, to do everything I just described, it takes time, it takes energy, and it takes money. And so once again, the fallback and the common sense approach is do business with established companies who have good reputations, who know what they're doing, who other consumers are relying upon. And, you know, 9 times out of 10, you're going to be okay.
Okay, what about the licenses that you can buy?
Well, I mean, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Maybe,
Okay.
What do you mean exactly by that?
All right, for example, in the field of Christian music, there is a music licensing company that will allow you, if you're a church and you're using popular Christian songs in your church,
Sure.
you have to have a license to do that. And so you
Okay.
buy the license, and it covers your use. You know, it might cover the distribution of the lyrics in written form. It might cover the live performance by your own people
Sure.
of the song. It might cover the recorded performance of a particular artist where you're just playing the song. And so you're buying a license for that.
Yes.
Is there a
Yes.
way to buy a license for everything? I mean, can I buy a license that's going to cover me if somebody inadvertently streams or plays a popular song on their phone with Pandora in the background while I'm live streaming?
Probably not. I mean, the
Okay.
license you just described is a license that's being sold to you by somebody that has the legal right to sell you that license. In this case,
Right.
the provider of the Christian music, whether it's the manager, the production company, or even the group. And so what a lot of people need to realize with licenses, though, is they're licensing you the rights to use that music for a particular purpose. In other words, maybe it's to also look at the license, because you might only have the right to use that license in a church-sponsored event. If you take that music outside of that environment over to a monster truck event or a motocross event, or to help maybe to use as music for the intro to your show, Streaming Idiots, you might not have the right to do that. So many licenses are focused on a particular right as opposed to a global type of use. So people need, that's another area I see people really getting caught by surprise with.
Now, wouldn't this be a great opportunity, though, for somebody in the licensing business to come up with a catch-all license that would cover I mean, I'm thinking about specifically what most people get ticked by is music. That's what the algorithms seem to be recognizing right now. I don't know that the algorithms have gotten to the point where they did recognize the video in the background of my friend's video, so they're getting good enough to do that. Either that or the company that owned that had an algorithm that was scanning for it.
I mean, so it's the technology's catching up with the intellectual property rights and the law. When you look at a band like the Grateful Dead, who a friend of mine, David Merriman Scott, writes about, David's a gifted marketer, speaker, love his books. But the Grateful Dead from day one has always encouraged everyone at their concerts to videotape what's going on, record what's going on, share it with the world. They didn't care what you did at their concerts. Brilliant marketing play by them. They were ahead of their times. Today, when you go into a concert, most of the time you're not allowed to do anything. You're not even allowed. I just listened today driving into work. One of our local schools, a very well-known school, just came down with a new rule this morning prohibiting students from audio recording their professors during their lectures. So they can't play them back. They can't share them on the internet. And I'm not sure what the reasons are behind that, but if that's the decision they make, then the students have to comply with that, or they're in breach of school rules and regulations and intellectual property right laws that professor or school may own, but based upon the contract of employment between the professor and school. Taking a step back and using that discussion as a foundation, it would be very, very tough for one entity, one company, to be in charge of all the licensing rights associated with music, with movies, with activities. Okay, what we're normally seeing is a company that's unique to the movie industry. Say Netflix, for instance. When you sign up for a Netflix account, you acquire the rights. You acquire a license to watch as many movies as you want, depending on your plan, on any device that you want, wherever you are, 24/7. That's what the license says. And I'm paraphrasing, but it doesn't give you the right to then take that movie that you're streaming and use it in your backdrop right now, Tom, to help, let's just say, highlight some of the things that we're talking about. Unless, of course, it falls under that fair use exception in one of the examples I gave. So it's tricky stuff, but I am excited about technology eventually making all of this easier for all of us. So that when we decide to do something and you create something, you'll click a button, it will submit the file or allow a cloud-based service to access the file on your laptop, your desktop, your mobile device, and it will give you a reading as to whether or not, on a scale of 1 to 100, whether or not the content you just created is appropriate, safe, and legal. And this is going to happen in the next 5 to 10 years based upon the things that I'm reading, especially when you correlate artificial intelligence into everything else that we're talking about. And I think it's going to be great. It's going to be great for consumers. It's going to put some lawyers out of business, but I'm okay with that. There's other things to do.
There's plenty of business. Do you think that YouTube is afraid of a class action lawsuit?
Well, I can't speak for YouTube, but I do feel that there's a struggle right now with providers as to what hat they're wearing. Are they simply a conduit between you providing information with me, almost like a telephone line, for example? Without that telephone line connecting us, we wouldn't be able to talk on the phone. Or is it more than that? Are they actually a media company that somehow has a duty or a responsibility to monitor what type of content they allow people to produce and allow people to access? I don't know the answer to that question. I'm okay, personally, me as a dad, more so as a lawyer, with Google and YouTube, making sure that the wrong type of content doesn't get disseminated around the world, sharing the wrong type of message. I mean,
Sure.
what is that? I mean, now we're talking free speech issues, and everything we're talking about falls back onto free speech. Who has the right to do what? I will tell everybody that when you're engaging with these companies, we have a term of service agreement. You're subject to their rules and regulations.
Right.
You don't have, it's like driving a car. You don't have the right to use Google. You're using Google subject to their terms and conditions. And so just be aware of what those terms and conditions are, which, by the way, 99.99% of all users never read the terms and conditions when they click the box. So you just be aware of those things.
Those terms and conditions were not written by regular people.
Nor do they need to be. I mean, the fact of the matter is, that's what I'm trying to say is the standard isn't what you and I think it should be. The standard is what the law says. And sometimes it's confusing even for lawyers to read all of the paragraphs and all the terminology that's contained in these documents. As a small business owner, if you have content that you're trying to protect, I would suggest putting together terms and conditions of your website, of your blog, of your live streaming show in plain, simple, and concise language so that everyone can understand it. And that way you're protecting yourself, you're protecting your users, you're protecting your audience. I'm really a big believer, Tom, in social media right now, and I love showing my human side. That's one of the advantages of I think, with social for lawyers is we can hopefully build a better reputation in the community by showing our human side. We're just like everybody else. And I'm hoping that by all of us working together to keep our community safe, by sharing advice, by helping each other, I mean, it makes the world a better place for all of us. And I really do see live streaming as the tool that will allow us to eventually get to that point.
I like that. I like that. Folks, if you're just joining us, Mitch Jackson is our guest today, and we're talking about copyright issues and live streaming. And, and he's doing his job as a lawyer to stay onto the straight and narrow. There's a record of what he's saying. He's got to say it right. Mitch, let's see if we can't get some questions from the chat room. I've seen some questions pop by, but folks, if you've got a question that hasn't already been answered, go ahead and post it now. What I was hearing earlier today, Mitch, is that we have about a 5 to 7 second latency between the time you and I say it and it gets heard on the other end. And with YouTube, that's probably the best I've ever heard with YouTube. When we started out doing YouTube, it would be 90 seconds between the time I said it and the time somebody else heard it. And can you imagine trying to have an interactive conversation with folks in a chat room, or to have an interactive conversation with somebody at the dinner table, but they're not allowed to reply for a minute and a half after you say it?
It's so exciting to be alive right now. Look, you're talking to somebody where it took a minute and a half to 2 minutes for my dial-up modem to connect over the telephone lines with the internet back in the day.
Now, what was that? Was that a 300, or a 52K modem?
Exactly. Yeah, it was.
Right.
It was something that does bring back memories. I haven't heard that terminology in a long time. But here's the thing: what I'm seeing happen is with our mobile devices right now. Everything you and I are talking about can be digested and oftentimes created with our mobile devices. And for shows like this, where right now it's still a challenge to create and produce a show with our mobile device, in 5 years it's going to be a couple of pushes of our buttons and we'll be rocking and rolling. People need to understand that more people around the world have access to these right here, to a smartphone connected to the internet, than they do drinking water, than they do working toilets. This is the future of what we're doing. It's a game changer. And so by what I think is going to happen, Tom, especially when I see my kids who are 22 and 17, they take all of this for granted. It's technology, right? And so sharing something really, really cool, if I hold up and I'm just going to roll the bar, I'm going to roll the dice. I'm going to live dangerously right now. But on my way in today, well, you can barely see it. This is what I picked up. This is from Starbucks. Okay, I honestly don't have the Starbucks logo covered on purpose. I can't get this off. It's stuck. But the point is people expect to be able to be themselves and just show what they're doing. Okay, copyright, trademark, trade name protected or not. And I do see the world, and I see the law evolving to allow that to happen in a more user-friendly situation. And I think that's a good thing. Now, Tom, just so you know, I've got about 5 more minutes and then I've got to run.
All right.
Okay.
Good. Let's. Here's a question. Somebody says, when I type out the copyright symbol, the C with the circle around it, 2017, my name, all rights reserved, does that actually make something copyrighted? Can you offer an opinion on that?
Yes, I can offer opinion. You don't need to do that. If you're the creator of copyrighted material, then you have the legal right and the legal copyright to that. By sharing that symbol, you're putting a little icing on the cake, shall we say. You're putting the world on express notice that you're the creator of that content.
Okay. Okay. So you don't have to specifically put a copyright symbol on something to keep somebody else from copying it illegally. Okay.
That's correct, and you don't have to file anything with the government either.
And you don't have to. Okay. Now,
No, but listen,
trademarks are
but
different.
real-
Trademarks
but
are
real-
different than copyrights. Yeah.
But real quick, let me just share that by doing so, by filing, okay, you're protecting your rights more thoroughly, and you may be creating additional rights and your entitlement to damages if you get into litigation. But to answer your original question, no, you don't have to do any of that to protect your copyrighted material. Once you create it, it's yours.
Got it. Got it. Okay. All right. I think you've done such a great job of covering the subject that nobody has a question. Although I look into the chat room, some of them are kind of got lost on the 300 baud modem, and they just went off into the thicket on that one. Yep. Yeah.
Those were the days.
The technology really has reached the point where I can say the promise of technology now that I understood 20 years ago has actually been achieved. That you can do the things that people promised you'd be able to do. Now you really can. Now you really can.
Yeah,
It's amazing.
it's pretty cool. It's
Mitch,
a global community.
You have been a real champ to come on the show and let me grill you like this. I really appreciate your time. If people want to follow you, they can do that at mitch.social, mitch.social, and they can see what you're up to. They can see the show that you're going to do slightly, and you've got a blog called streaming.lawyer that they can follow you on too. So you may pick up, you won't pick up any clients from this bunch. They're a bunch of cheapskates, but you may get some questions.
I'll settle for a few friends.
There you go.
That's honestly, Tom, after 30 years of doing what I'm doing, what I enjoy about social is building new relationships. I enjoy, like I said, just trying to show the community that, there are a lot of hardworking lawyers. I married one. I met her in law school. I'm still in love with 28, 30 years later, that we try to do the right thing.
You better know what that number is. Yeah.
Yeah, it's 28.
Okay.
28. But we've been practicing together for 30 years. And, yeah, she told me, Tom, when we got married, I could make all the important decisions. We just haven't had any yet, so it's all good. Hey, listen, I've got to run. Thank you very much for having me on today's show. I'm here for you and anyone else. If you have any questions, just reach out. It's always a pleasure.
Mitch, it was a treat. Thank you for coming on.
All right.
Folks,
Thanks, Tom.
send your thanks to Mitch. And Mitch, we appreciate you coming on. You can cut your Zoom feed anytime you want to. Love to hear your feedback on this. You can register it now in the chat room. We're going to close out the show here in just a minute. You're welcome, if you're watching us live, to join us for the post show. We have some refreshments today. We have some mixed nuts, but that's mostly you guys. And then of course I've got my lemonade. If you just stumbled in, you're wondering what in the world has this what is this show? What's been going on? This has been Streaming Idiots. Streaming Idiots is a production of Eastern Shore Broadcasting, my company, in Fairhope, Alabama, where we help folks learn how to stream. We do coaching. We sell all sorts of goods and services like custom PCs for streaming. Some of the more difficult to find items like capture cards and X-Key controllers, PTZ cameras from PTZ Optics, streaming software from vMix, and I also design and build custom PCs for folks that want to do serious streaming. And you can get more information there at easternshorebroadcasting.com on that one. Thank you for tuning in. We'll see you next week. Oh, yeah, next week, R.J. Murdoch. You remember R.J. was the studio that we visited last week. R.J. Murdoch is going to be on the show to talk about streaming basketball. So if you're into sports streaming, you really want to tune in and see his setup. He's got a really neat setup, multi-cameras, running on a laptop, lots of cool different devices that he's using to make his life easier. So you won't want to miss that. On behalf of all the staff, here at Eastern Shore Broadcasting, I'm Tom Sinclair. It's been a treat to have you with us today, and we'll see you next time. And we are out. And you notice I had the little copyright down there at the end. Thank you, Martin Kay, for that wonderful outro today. And wasn't it cool to have Mitch here as a guest and talk about copyrights and I guess content providers, content creators, content users. Kind of interesting, that whole thing. Let me get this chat out of the way so I can see. There we go. In some ways, I agree. We can be screwed no matter what direction we go in. And it doesn't really give much help to that inadvertent and accidental use of copyrighted material, except to say, I think the one big message that I got from Mitch was do your due diligence, and that also means, if you're in a situation where you're in a venue that you don't know, that's a strange venue for you, it's on your neck to find out, are they going to play music? Is there going to be a band? Am I going to have somebody 2 rows behind me playing Pandora? You do the best you can with that kind of situation. Obviously, you're not going to get everything 100% of the time, but you do the best you can. And I guess in some ways, too, the news is also that, and this is not what Mitch said, because he really didn't touch on it very much at all, but he was talking about from the legal system, and it's not the legal system that most of us are bumping into. It's a provider like YouTube or Facebook or somebody else like that is making the rules, the laws, and dishing out the punishment, the justice. And their rules and their standards are not necessarily going to be fair to us at all. I really do think that Google and Facebook may not be afraid, but I think they're being very prudent and trying to protect themselves from a class action lawsuit by an attorney that's going to go and talk to every copyright holder anywhere and say, YouTube is not protecting your copyright. They're allowing your materials to be broadcast over their network. And even though they say, hey, we're just the telephone line, really they do hold some responsibility. And, we can take them to court and we can get some money out of them. I think that's what Google and Facebook are worried about, and that's what is coming down. That's the rain that's fallen down on us is from Facebook and Google and other CDNs like that they don't want to put themselves in a potentially liable situation where they might hold responsibility for something that they didn't do. Kind of the same thing that we're saying. Jim's saying in the chat, that's the best reason not to count on YouTube or Facebook. They do not have your best interest at heart. They do not, they're looking after themselves first, and for a company that is appropriate. they're the ones that have the most to lose. Nobody is going to be knocking at my door because I used 45 seconds of a Mick Jagger song by accident at a basketball game. Mick Jagger is not going to send an attorney with a subpoena to me to go to court over that. But class action lawyers are smart, and they will figure out if there's a cash cow to be tapped into here. Now, you say, or I see Rafael said, funny thing, guys, there are YouTube channels that are not flagged for background music. When I started my VidBlaster Guy show, that VidBlaster Guy back in 2012, July 2012, coming up this summer, it'll be 5 years we've been doing live streams. I had what I thought was really cool music. I had gone to, I think, Pond 5 or maybe another service like that had, that was a reseller of other people's materials. And I bought a license to that music, the theme music for this show called Fresh and Fun. I love it. Is something I bought a license for. And both times with the VidBlaster Guy show and with this show, probably the first month or so, I got flagged for using somebody else's content. And what I had to do was basically go to my agreement with the provider and cut and paste the entire license and upload it as part of my complaint to YouTube to say, hey, I've got a license to use this. And within a week or two after that, everything went away, and all the flags had been removed. But it was a little scary there the first time. The second time I knew what was going on, and so I knew where to go to get the information I needed right off the bat and was able to get it squared away more clearly. I don't know if there's a way to do that preemptively. I know the person that sent me this email, who shall remain nameless. Well, I guess I named his show, so I guess he can't remain nameless. He was using material that he thought he had the rights to use, and it may have been that that he didn't. That it was a company that was providing something that had been provided. Something had been provided to them, kind of like somebody that was reselling stolen goods, and so he bought what he thought was a legitimate product because he didn't buy it from a shady guy that opened his jacket and said, oh yeah, here's a Rolex watch. Yeah, Jim says it's free for a reason. Jerry says, under the DMCA, any copyright holder can send a takedown notice and the CDN must comply. They have no choice. Well, I mean, you can choose to disobey the law, Jerry, of course. You've got that choice. But if you're going to obey the law, you probably will want to do exactly what the DCMA, the DMCA. I've heard of lots of cases where there are companies out there that do nothing but claim copyrights on materials that may or may not really be theirs. The algorithm may flag it as having, a riff or, several bars of music that are similar to what their copyright is, and so it gets flagged by the algorithm. That's not a bad thing. It just is what it is. John says, using a CDN without automatic flagging doesn't make it legal. You may not risk your live stream to be taken down, but you still risk a lawsuit. Good point. Good point. I think at this point, and I wish it wasn't true, but I think at this point, for a lot of us, a copyright violation, we don't represent any money for somebody to go sue. I mean, if somebody's going to pay a lawyer $500 an hour to come after me, he's going to squeeze that turnip and get 50 cents out of it. So it's not worth going after me. But if you're working on behalf of someone else, let's say you've got a contract to live stream a gig for the Red Cross or from another organization that has national ties, that organization could get in trouble just because of the content in your live stream. So, forewarned is forearmed. Let's see. Philip says, just looking at the Austrian licensing platform for music, they provide a nice PDF of how much you have to pay them for the license, and it's written in German. I love it. Oh, golly. What I had hoped to ask Mitch, and he didn't appear to really want to address the licensing very much, but was, if I'm in a church situation and I've got a license, and I think Carl spoke to this a little while ago, if I've got a license to allow me to do certain things within the church, for example, to make photocopies of copyrighted music, to have my choir perform copyrighted music, that the license to do that is not the same license to stream that. And I know with CCLI, they've actually got a streaming license now, and you've got to read the text of the streaming license or talk with somebody at CCLI to understand that the streaming license, that the streaming license may or may not cover the playing of a pre-recorded song or music by the original artist. The license may only cover your performing that. So there's a big difference, between the two. So, all right, Rafael says, as far as I know, they pay only to a few companies for music that use some clips. I'm sorry, I don't understand that. We'll skip that one. So Merle is asking, so is what YouTube provides even safe? Now that's a good question too. I know you can use YouTube. You can use background music provided by YouTube, where YouTube has said you can use this. Now, that doesn't mean you might not get in trouble for using it later, but at least you've got YouTube telling you that it's okay. Gary says he's got 5 licenses. He's got an ASCAP, a BMI, a CSAC, a CCS. I've not heard of that one, and a CVI. For the church, we pay over $1,000 a year are we protected on YouTube for broadcast video? Well, Gary, it depends on what the licenses say. Again, I know CCLI, which is, what's the name of that? Christian Copyright Licensing International. That's it. CCLI has got different licenses for different purposes. And for example, they sell their licenses based on the size of the church. So if you've got a church of 50 members or less, there's a different license price than if you've got a church of 5,000 or more. And you certainly don't want to cheat on that. No church wants to be cheating. The Lord doesn't bless cheaters. George Vick says, we're in no man's land at this point. Kind of like when Napster ended the music industry. George, that's a great point. I was trying to think of Napster earlier, and I couldn't remember the name because Napster got shut down, even though they said, hey, we're just a conduit. We're just a telephone line. Paul D., we'll see you later. Okay, Vedran says that in Croatia, they don't give any money to music producers. Huh, that's not fair. Boris says, this is streaming according to this website, could protect you for $2 million in church streaming. Church Copyright Solutions. Okay, there's a good reference right there. Thank you, Boris. Rich says when he was live streaming with CVS Sports for his jet ski races, they briefed him that I could not add in or pick up any music due to possible copyright. Was really boring without music. Well, and it might get a little confusing at some point too, Rich, if you add music that you have a right to, but it's being rebroadcast over CBS, and they may not have copyright to it, or a license for it. So yeah, well, but you could always hum, but you can't hum a tune that belongs to somebody else. Tom Griffith, glad to have you. Go back to work. Boris still needs to get CCLI. Kenny says, does it seem to make a difference on algorithms on YouTube of live content versus simple uploaded content? There is copywritten content all over YouTube, from direct band recordings to Junior doing a band cover in the garage. They seem to remain up. Yeah, Kenny, one of the ways that YouTube handles copyrighted material is they will let you know if you are the YouTube content creator. I mean, if you use copyrighted music in your thing and they pick up on it, depending on what's going on behind the scenes, and I don't know all the behind the scenes stuff, I know a little bit of it, they may let your content stay up, but they may not allow you to monetize it. So if you're going to do the little, put an ad in it and get revenue from it, you can't do it. The revenue will go to the copyright holder. So you still get your content up. In fact, last night I was I was trying to find some songs. I don't want to go on the record with this. Anyway, last night I was looking at YouTube and I was looking at some of the Beatles stuff, and I noticed that there were a lot of performances on there, live performances as well as recorded performances that that were available. And I would have thought, oh, those should have been shut down for copyright. But what probably was going on is that whoever held the copyright to that material had contacted YouTube, and YouTube was now letting them have the proceeds if there was any monetization going on. For my church stuff, when I do it for Grace Church here in Fairhope, we simply say, we're not going to monetize anything. So, if there's a severe copyright issue, they may shut us down. But if it's just a minor copyright where they pick up a little background music and they want to say, okay, there's copyright violation, but we're just going to say you can't monetize it, you can't seek it, you can't reap any benefit from it, and instead it'll go back to the copyright holder. So I suspect there are probably different levels, in YouTube. If I'm doing a show that's got millions of viewers and I'm obviously making millions of dollars by whatever it is, then maybe they're going to come after me a little harder than if it's just something that has 20, 50, 100, 200 views. If I'm getting 1 million views on something, they may view that a little bit more differently. Rich says, even humming a tune that is copyrighted can shut you down. Yep. John says it depends on how bad you hum. Guido says YouTube has contracts for some music, but not all. Okay. And Philip says, in addressing Kenny, but the copyright owners might monetize their videos on YouTube and may even change their opinion about a song and, for example, take it down years later. Rich says he's got to go. Bye, Rich. And thank you for the great show. John says in Denmark, there are 2 organizations that manage music rights. In some areas, the 2 cooperate, but in essence, if you stream it, like in a bar or cafe or an elevator, you have to make an agreement with those organizations and provide a sample list of music you've used, a sample that covers 2 weeks out of the year. Interesting. I know CCLI used to require that you submit to them a list of all the songs you played throughout the year in your church and the number of times you played them. And I always thought that was kind of onerous, and then I understood that's how the artists get paid. When I buy the license, a certain part of my license goes to pay for every single song that I use. And so they were trying to divvy it up and account for it like that, and yeah, I'm sure they gave up. Boris says, there you go. You can find almost any song on YouTube with lyrics. Great for karaoke parties. Well, Boris, I got to start coming to your parties. Nobody's ever invited me to a karaoke party. Philip says, Austria, the same 2 organizations. They even put their pieces together in one PDF. That's good. Dave says, nonprofits have different avenues of licensing. That is true. Rich says, great show. For some reason, YouTube was stuttering in the middle, but Facebook was okay. See you next week. Well, YouTube. They probably didn't like our content. Jim says he takes issue with me. He says less views and lower revenues is not a safeguard. Some copyright issues with major companies are addressed regardless, because if they don't have a legal standing to go after the bigger infringements. Aha. I've actually seen this happen with a soft drink company. I can believe that. Who was it I was talking to the other day that had a phrase that they had coined, and it had escaped into the wild, and they couldn't track it down. It might have been one of you. I don't remember. Interesting. Well, this was definitely a live topic. A live topic. All right, Dan says he's got to go, but y'all need to go to facebook.com/groups/streaming-idiots and vote in his poll about what color the buttons should be in the X-Key controller. This is not a laughing matter, folks. This is important. I'll tell you. The reason is, in vMix, when you have preview and program, the preview is orange and the program is green. In every other switcher that has preview and program, the preview is red and the program is green, or the output is green. And so he's like, do I do preview for orange because that's what vMix is, or do I do it red because that's what the industry expects? And so go vote in that poll. Merle says, no answer to this problem, do I see? Well, Merle, there is an answer. Just don't live stream. Just live stream from a studio where you don't have any outside music popping in that you didn't control, that you haven't paid for the rights to. John L. says, this is actually what these two organizations are doing in Denmark. Your fee depends on your viewers, size of the bar, etc. The money you pay are spread out to all the copyright owners. There you go. There you go. So, my conclusion to all this is, if you're a church or a religious organization, get a hold of CCLI, and I think there's one other one for churches. Jim says red is program, preview is green. Oh, well, see, that's how much I know. And you can change vMix. Yes, you can. But if you're doing tech support, and I say the green window, I'm going to be talking about the output window. Stephen Haywood says preview is green, program is red. There's the industry standard. Thank you, Stephen. Glad to have you. Martin S. says, what a minefield. I think Charlie Chaplin had the right idea. And Martin S., what was Charlie Chaplin's right idea? I don't know. You got to tell us. Bill says, send both or make a choice of kits to send with the switcher. Well, Bill, that was my answer. That was one of the answers on the poll question. I said send both, because they just pop right off. Stephen Hollywood says he's taking notes. Stephen has got a great show called Broadcast Now that is on Tuesday evenings at 5 o'clock Eastern. Is that right, Stephen? Or 6 o'clock Eastern? And it's thetechbuzz.net. You can go there, and he's got a great studio, and he has all sorts of interesting guests. I think Nick Craig was his guest on Monday when they did the Monday show. Stephen, what's the name of your Monday show? Anyway, he'll have to post the name of it. All right, let's see. John says, looks like I need to go in and look at our picture-in-picture content. I would take a look at everything just to be sure. Guido says, in the hockey stadium we're streaming from, we gave the DJ a list of things not to play. As long as he holds it to himself, we're safe. That's good. That's good. I like that. That's a good idea. That's proactive. Saying, okay, look, here, this is the kind of stuff that's going to get us in trouble. Stephen says, hopefully you had a bunch of people show up because we were talking about it on Monday. Well, thank you, Stephen. We had a good audience today. Jim says, great show, no real answers to this problem. Well, Jim, did you really think there was going to be an answer? We had a lawyer. We had a lawyer on the show. Come on. You know what we ought to do to balance this out? We ought to get a representative from one of the licensing organizations to come in and talk about the licensing angle on it. I'm sure we can't get anybody from Facebook or YouTube to be on the record. But it would be interesting to have somebody from the licensing angle talk about that. I'll see if I can't set that up. Gary L. says, great show. Have to leave to watch the show later, Gary Lucas. Bye, Gary. Gary has got a church that has a bad main beam in the sanctuary, and it's going to cost them $150,000 to replace that main beam. Meanwhile, their streaming system is on hold. So pray for Gary and his church to get that done quickly so they can start streaming. John said by someone being red-green colorblind, I can actually easily see the default colors in vMix. Red would be a problem because to John, red and green look the same, but he can distinguish the orange. That's good. Stephen, I think Tom would agree. The only real answer is just pay for your stuff from reputable sites. And even then, you're liable to get flagged the first time you use it. Nick, if you can't get here on time, just show up whenever you can. You can use the YouTube DVR function and just drag it back to the beginning and watch from the very beginning. Anderson says, great show. Pretty, I had internet problems during the show. Now it's running so smooth. Anderson, I'm sorry to see that. But hey, you're living in Barbados, dude. We don't have too much sympathy for you. Let's see. What did I miss? Kenny, nice show. Video quality looked good on Facebook. Also good. A bit less of delay there than on the home site. Thank you, Kenny. That's good feedback. Kent, Tom, if you trim out the content on the video on YouTube, is that okay using the YouTube trim editor? Kent, I don't know. That's a good question. I know that YouTube, scans this stuff pretty quickly, and you're not always able to trim it as quickly as you might want. I've actually I did that about 6 or 7 months ago on a church video where I knew we had picked up a little bit of the recorded music that plays before the service, and so I went to trim it out, and before I got there to trim it out, it had been flagged for copyright. So, we'll see. John L., good idea, Tom. Get someone that actually sell us some licenses. That's right. Well, I'll end up being an affiliate of them, and I'll let you be an affiliate too. Mike L., we need someone from BMI, ASCAP, or SOCAN to come in to explain the licenses. That's a great idea, Mike. Great idea. All right, Guido says, for auto faders, I believe green is preview and yellow-orange is live. Interesting. Yeah, that's probably why the tally lights are red, huh? Ken, even YouTube offers you the option to mute the audio track exactly where you found the copyright issues. That's a good point, Philip. They do. And unfortunately, if your announcer is announcing during the course of that, you mute your announcer too, because they can't just mute the background music, because to them they just mute the audio track, as you say. But, in extreme cases or where there's just the background music playing, that would work. Unless you trip over that invisible line, somewhere. And John is giving us an anatomy lesson about color blindness. And John is doing a little NDI tonight, bringing in another PC and a phone for a camera. There's no such thing, John, as a little NDI. It'll be like, I'm a little pregnant. You're either doing NDI or you're not. No. That's good. That's good. If you run into a problem and you think I can help, shoot me an email, tom@easternshorebroadcasting.com. Because occasionally it can get confusing, especially if you have a concept of how something works and your concept is not exactly how it works. That happens to me all the time. I think it should work this way, and so I go to do it, and it doesn't, and then I'm stumped. What's the deal? Yeah, this tree right here looks like it's growing out of my head. I gotta find a different slide. Oh, that's better. Oh my goodness. All right, Kenny, great having you. Great having you. Thanks for tuning in. What else is cooking? Whew. I was talking to somebody yesterday, and they said, "Well, you know, Tom, I want to have a talk show and have guests on, and have them Skype in, and but I don't know how to use any of the software. Is it easy?" I'm like, with vMix 19, it would be so easy. You would just do this, and it would be done. But now you've got to do this, and this that I did before the show today. And fortunately, I'd had half of it set up. I did try a trick today that I'd never tried before, and it didn't even dawn on me before. But I used Zoom with my broadcast, and let's see if I can't do a capture to show you. We'll just capture my remote desktop, which I think is display 1. Let's see. Nope, it's display 2. Desktop capture, display 2. What? It gave me both as the same one. Well, that won't work. Add input, desktop capture, display number 2. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so this is display number 2, and I'm going to bring up Zoom, and I'm going to say start a Zoom meeting, and oh, you get to see what goes off and off forever, don't you? Well, let's see. Why don't we do it this way? Why don't we cut and no, I can't do it like that. Well, I guess I can't show you. Oh well, next time. I'll do a little tutorial on it. Basically, it's taking the Zoom window, which is this window right here. Can you see my cursor right there? And you see the gray bar down in the bottom. There are actually 2 Zoom windows. There's this one, and then there's this one. And the second one doesn't have the gray bar down at the bottom, but the one with the gray bar is the one where your guests come in on. And so you can go ahead and capture this window in advance and do all the cropping that you need to. And that way when your guest comes in, there's far less to do. And for today, for example, Mitch was a little later than that made me comfortable. At quarter till, he still wasn't on the call. Giles says use external 2 to feed Zoom. Well, I'll try that. Let's see. External 2 is going to be, why don't we make it preview? And then we'll start Zoom. And we'll change. And then we'll go in here and change to vMix external 2. And let's see, I'll probably have to restart or something. Well, it doesn't want to work right now, Giles. Oh well. Oh well. I guess you can see. That's right. That'll work. I mean, basically, it's just that window right there. In Zoom, you'll have 2 windows that comes up. Window number 1. This window is my image. Window number 2, it will be my guest, but for right now, it's populated with my image. So. So I can go ahead and capture this window in vMix. It was that was more trouble than it was worth. I'm sorry. Oh goodness, too fun. All right, John's got an interesting solution. He said, what we've done recently is to drown the arena music with YouTube music while the announcers were talking too. It prevents YouTube from identifying the music from the arena. It's not nice, but it works. You might also try a noise gate. That might work, but obviously there's still, when the announcers talk, there would still be music in their background. Philip says send an aux external to Zoom, then you won't have the infinite. Giles says use X2 to the Zoom feed. Martin says do what Giles is saying. Giles is saying put your camera on X2. Yeah. Anyway. Merle says, John, you can do your best part with the licenses, but the incidental stuff seems to be the problem or a big part of it. And, and Merle, that's the thing where, we're just going to have to figure out how to work around it. For me at the church, I know when the incidental music plays. It plays before the service. And so I have, I wanted to have some music that played in the background for the folks watching the live stream before the service started, and I couldn't have what was playing in the church. I assume we have a license for that. I haven't inquired. But so I went out and bought the license for a single song. And it's a piano rendition of a very soft kind of worshipful song that plays at the beginning. I'm hoping, helping folks get ready for worship. And I just put it on a loop. And so it plays continually until the service starts. And so I've accomplished my purpose, but I didn't do it the way I wanted. I mean, I didn't do it the easiest way. And, it did require spending a few dollars on that, but that's okay. Giles says he's not sure what the point of the second window is in Zoom. He's disabled it in options, so he just has the main window. Well, that's a good idea. Probably takes up less CPU usage. And vMix says, good morning, still going? Must have been a good show. vMix is in the house. What time is it there? Let's see, it is about 6:30 in the morning in Australia. We had Andrew Seaborn here earlier. Yeah, he's still on the list, whether he's still there or not. So this is your time, guys. When you got vMix in the house, you better let it fly. Andrew S. says, what I do simply is have the commentators use headset mics that don't pick up much background sound, and during the times that they are not talking, I mute the mics. He's even stopped putting out a mic for ambient noise. And see, that's the balance there. That's the balance. How do you handle the balance? I think the ambient noise adds so much to it. Like for a baseball game or a basketball game that's being here in the States that's NBA or MLB, the big leagues. They certainly must have some sort of license and understand what music is going to be played in between. Although, as I think about it, generally in baseball, every batter, at least for the home team, has a song that he likes played when he comes up to the plate. And for the most part, I don't ever remember hearing that. And I wonder if maybe they just have figured out a way to cut out all the ambient audio for that moment, and then turn all the ambient audio back on. Certainly you could have a loop of ambient audio that you could play when you were afraid that music would otherwise be playing. Interesting. I'll have to think through that one some more. All right, vMix says it's 7:30 there. And Andrew says it's 8:30 there. Queensland doesn't have daylight savings time, so it's 9:30 on the Gold Coast. All right, it's 10:30 in New Zealand, and Chris has to go to work. Thank you, Chris. Glad to have you. John says, we got flagged for the music in our announcers' headsets. That's why I now keep the YouTube music in the background to drown out the little music that sneaks in. Obviously, we kill the ambient mic as well. Yep. And vMix says, hello, USA, UK, and those in the future in Sydney. Well, actually, you're in the future because it's Thursday there. It's still Tuesday. It's still Wednesday here. Wow, Merle's got it. Buy a license for fake crowd noise. I like that. I like that. That's a good one. That's a good one. Okay. Oh, something I was going to mention earlier, and I'll mention it now while I'm thinking. Let me bring up my calendar to know for sure. Coming up in April is the NAB show, National Association of Broadcasters in Las Vegas, and it's going to be April 24th through April 27th, which is a Monday. And vMix is going to be there, of course. PTZ Optics will be there, of course. Magewell will be there. I'm not sure about PI Engineering, but I'll check with them, the X-Key guys. And I'm going to be there, courtesy of vMix, at the vMix booth. So if you're in and around Las Vegas and you want to go to NAB, by all means, come on by the vMix booth, and we'll figure out where it is at some point and let you know. But you want to make your hotel reservations sooner than later. That's for sure. And then 2 months later, in June, June 8th through June 10th, which is a Thursday through the Saturday, will be the vMix meetup in Atlanta at StreamCon. StreamCon is a new, I would say it's a conference. It's not a convention. It's not a trade show. But it's a conference where folks that do live streaming will be gathering in Atlanta to talk about all things live streaming. And we'll have a list of speakers and presenters to you as that comes in. You can go to streamcon.net to get more information. Okay, Merle has exhausted all his ideas. He's got to go. vMix asks, hello, Denmark. Carl's got to go too. Bye, Carl. Canada still loves vMix. vMix says everybody's going to be there. That's right. Anderson's got flagged for some music, but it was original music. He recorded it. I had to let them know it's my original music so I can play it any time. PI Engineering will be there too. Also very good. Well, Anderson, that's cool. I've often thought about having my son, who's a singer and songwriter, write something for me. He's actually written some really cool music. I might play sometime and see if it gets flagged. That'd be interesting. All right. Let's see who might have joined us. North Carr is here. Jerry, I haven't welcomed you, even though I spoke to you. Who else? Matthew, welcome. Guest 934, welcome. Dave Edwards, welcome. Vandren, welcome. Jim Jacobs, welcome. GMO, glad to have you. Peter H. And George Price. Gary L. Scott Whitney, glad to have you guys. Sorry I didn't recognize you earlier. Well, I think we are about ready to fold our tent. I know what I would like. If you guys think about it, if you are in the Facebook group, facebook.com/groups/streaming-idiots, if you see something like an announcement about this show that you think is, hey, that's pretty interesting, I'd love it if you would share that with your friends so we can help increase our numbers. And also, there was a feature request on the vMix forum today for vMix to ask you to save your presets before you exited the program. I think that's a great idea. So if you think so too, go to the forum, go to features, feature requests. That's forums.vmix.com. Go to feature requests and do a +1 on that. John L. says, make your son release the music in public domain and put it on your website for us to download. It will give him massive promotion. John, I think you overestimate the viewing audience just a tad. And he and I have talked about that, and the last thing he wants is for his music to end up being performed by some big name artist, and he doesn't have the rights to it. So he's a little hesitant at this point. But he'll get it all figured out. All right. Well, I am so honored as always that you guys would come hang out with me, and I think we're going to get this rascal tied up, and the whole show, the pre-show, the show, and the post-show should be available immediately on YouTube. And then in a few minutes, I'm going to upload just the show. So if you're interested in just the interview part, that'll be available too. So, unless somebody else has got some pressing business to bring in front of this assembly, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. You know, the motion to adjourn is the only motion that does not need a second. Interesting little parliamentary trick there. Tom tweeted the show before it started. Thank you, Tom. All right. Oh, I know what we could do. I could sweeten the pot and say next week's show, and I'm not going to remind you, you have to remember, anybody that shares my notice of the show will get a prize. Let's see. Anderson was asking the same for vMix, but it auto-saves the last preset. Plus, I save each setup with a name, then I can load them when I want. Anderson, I agree with that, and you can do that indeed, but what I find I do is that I make all sorts of changes to a preset. I get out of vMix, I come back in, I load that profile, and it's too late to click, not profile, but preset, and it's too late to click the last button and have my unsaved work refresh itself. So, Martin, the weather is beautiful today. We had tornadoes through here yesterday, but none got us. John L., who is hiding behind the keyboard of the vMix user? Well, you'll have to ask them. And the vMix user says, a prize. Yes, a prize. Philip says Philip says that vMix is going to give a free HD license for all the folks that share my post. Well, Philip, I thank you for working that out with vMix. That's great. Tom wants a banana. Ah, there you go. There you go. Actually, I have something that I think is better than a banana. But I can't. Actually, there's a new vMix mascot. Who can name what the new vMix mascot is? vMix says our next show might be Europe friendly. Have you picked a day? John L. says, yay. Well, Philip's going to have to negotiate that one with vMix if they want to give away licenses on this show. That's up to them. Suffice to say, I will not be giving away licenses for that. Well, just a word, vMix. You have a day. I just can't remember what it is. The sooner you can put the day out there, the sooner we can help you promote it. And it's nice to promote things as far, and if you're doing a monthly show, it's sure nice to have it out there at the beginning of the month so people can plan. I don't know about everybody, but if it's going to be a European show, that means it's going to be like 2 or 3 in the morning for me. And I want to plan when I can, make sure I'm going to be in a place where I can get up at that time of night and not worry. Anyway, no big deal. Apple, a tomato. Martin says it's going to be Tom Sinclair. There we go. All right. Anderson, don't be late for church, because if anybody needs church, it's probably you. You and me. All right, my friends. It's great hanging out with you, and we'll see you next week when RJ comes into the studio to share about his basketball setup, and you won't want to miss that show. And vMix is going to work it out today what day the show is and let us know, and that's great. That's great. A martini as a mascot? I think you're wrong. But it could, the martini could fit into it. The martini could be something that the mascot dealt with. Did I give it away? Probably. Okay. All right. We're going to let this run out so that if you are watching and there have been any sorts of terrible delays, then you will not be left high and dry. Let me get a suitable graphic to put up on the screen so that, come on, Tom, find it. It's in here somewhere. Bum, 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 bum. Heck, by the time I go through all this, I could have just have done it. Let's browse through and see. It's in Dropbox, it's in graphics, it's in backgrounds. No, I guess it didn't. Well, we'll give you guys a little bit of this. How about this? And all right. So we'll see you later. Thanks for watching.